My wife announced to our friends that she needed a new husband because the current one had apparently broken. I simply replied that now she was free. Problem solved. After that, I left the restaurant and never looked back. Get ready. This will not be an easy story. My wife called me broken furniture in front of 8 witnesses during a dinner. That was the moment I realized, if I am defective, let her look for a replacement. I will tell you how, in 3 months, I turned from a spineless person into a free man. I am 37 years old. I work as a mechanical engineer at a factory in the state of Ohio. I have been working there for 12 years already. I went from a beginner to a leading specialist. I got the job right after college during hard economic times, and I was lucky to find this place. I stayed because the tasks were interesting, and the management treated me with respect. The job is not the most prestigious, but it pays well, and I am a pro at it. I design production systems, fix breakdowns, optimize work processes. This kind of work requires extreme attentiveness and problem-solving skills, which, apparently, made me boring in my personal life. We will come back to that. I have always been someone who plans everything in advance. Since childhood, I organized games in the yard, making sure everyone knew the meeting time and their tasks. Friends joked that I would plan my retirement before turning 30, and they were not wrong. At 23, I opened a retirement account. At 29, I bought a house. And by 32, I fully paid off the truck loan. Some would call it responsibility, but my ex-wife considered it predictability, as if it were some incurable disease. The home plays an important role in this story. I bought it 6 years before the divorce, and a full 2 years before meeting Nicole. It is a building with 3 bedrooms in a good neighborhood. Nothing extraordinary, but a solid construction. Before buying, I checked everything. The foundation, the prices in the area, every square inch of space, the mortgage, the title documents, all payments. Everything was in only my name and paid from my personal account. I had been investing in this property since I was 29. By the time Nicole moved in with me after the wedding, I had already paid off almost 1/3 of the value. We met about 7 years ago at a charity gala. She was volunteering at the registration desk, and I was representing my sponsoring company. The first thing I noticed was her laugh. She had incredible energy. She was always the center of attention and knew how to make people like her. It seemed to me that we complemented each other. She brought spontaneity into my orderly life, and I gave her stability. A classic case of opposites attracting, which worked for a while. We dated for 2 years before getting married. The wedding was modest, about 80 guests, a reception in her parents' backyard, food from a local barbecue restaurant. Her family accepted me well. Her father appreciated my stable job and that I could fix things myself. Her mother thought I was polite and well-mannered, the ideal candidate for a husband. After the wedding, Nicole took over redecorating the interior. She had great taste, and the house really needed a woman's touch. She repainted the living room a warm gray, bought new pillows, hung pictures on the empty walls. The place started to feel like a real home, not just a point for sleeping and eating. The first few years were wonderful. We went on dates on Fridays, traveled on weekends, hosted guests. Nicole worked part-time at a boutique in the city center. She claimed that full-time work was too much stress. Since my income was enough for everything, I did not insist otherwise. It seemed logical back then. I paid the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance. Her salary went to personal things, clothes, manicures, hairdressers, and lunches with friends. I thought that was what partnership looked like. Looking back, I realized the warning signs were there from the beginning. Small remarks that I took for humor. She joked that I looked like a golden retriever, always eager to please and following her around. She called me predictable, and it sounded like an insult disguised as a compliment. When I planned dates or remembered anniversaries, she said, "At least you are reliable." Each phrase on its own seemed insignificant, but they accumulated like snow on a roof. Sooner or later, it had to collapse. Her circle did not help the situation. Her friends seemed to compete over who had the worse husband. Every meeting turned into a complaint contest about partners. Nicole came home and compared me to Jenna's or Megan's husbands, noting that at least I did not forget holidays and helped around the house. This faint praise still felt like criticism. Real problems started about 1.5 years before the finale. Nicole joined a book club. A group of women met once a month to drink expensive drinks and discuss novels. Nothing wrong with the hobby, but Nicole started coming home with new complaints. Suddenly, our life became not exciting enough. the house too ordinary, and my job too stable and lacking ambition. She demanded spontaneity and adventurousness from me. She told me how one friend's husband surprised her with a trip to Costa Rica, and another quit his corporation to start a food truck. I was expected to destroy our stability for the reckless actions of other people. The jokes at my expense at parties became meaner. She called me furniture that just pays the bills. Her friends laughed awkwardly, while I wondered when my wife started hating me. The golden retriever comparison was now made in public and meant loyal, stupid, and convenient. I tried to discuss this in private, asking why she humiliated me in front of others. The answer was standard. I was too sensitive. It was just humor. I needed to relax. She said everyone makes fun of their spouses, and was I really so fragile that I could not handle a little teasing? And I endured. I kept planning holidays, paying bills, saving money, and maintaining the house. I believed that if I tried harder and proved I was not boring, everything would get better. But it only got worse. Then came the evening that changed everything. We had a tradition of monthly dinners with 3 other couples. There were Dave and Melissa, Mike and Brittany, Ryan and Courtney. We had been friends for years. That night, we gathered at a small Italian restaurant. Nicole had a hard week at the boutique because of a conflict with a client and a manager. I immediately knew she was looking for a target to vent her aggression, and that target was me. At first, the conversation was calm. We talked about kids, work, vacation plans. Ryan mentioned Hawaii. Mike talked about a difficult project. When they asked me about work at the factory, I started telling them about the new production line that would increase output by 15%. I was proud of this development, but Nicole interrupted me mid-sentence. She announced loudly to everyone that she needed a new husband because this one had broken. Dead silence fell. You could even hear the ice melting in the glasses. Someone coughed awkwardly. Her friend Kayla tried to break the tension with a strained laugh, but Nicole did not stop. She called me useless, said that all I did was work and sleep, and compared living with me to owning expensive furniture that only takes out the trash once in a while. 8 people looked at me. My face was burning. Dave studied his breadstick, Mike stared at the bottom of his glass, and their wives exchanged meaningful glances. At that moment, a switch seemed to click in my head. For a year and a half, I had been making excuses for her behavior, blaming it on stress or a phase in the relationship. But seeing her smile while humiliating me publicly, I realized she means it, and she will not stop until I take action. I stopped looking at the situation through her eyes. I saw simple and pure disrespect. I slowly folded my napkin and stood up. Everyone expected me to turn it into a joke, as usual. But I looked at Nicole and calmly said, "Now you are free. Problem solved." And I headed for the exit. She started yelling after me, not understanding what was happening, calling it a joke and asking me to come back. I walked past the hostess, who looked at me sympathetically, and went out to the parking lot. My phone started blowing up with calls before I even reached my car. I ignored them, started the engine, and drove home. The drive took 15 minutes. For the first time in a long time, I was thinking completely clearly. There was no anger, no sadness, only a cold understanding of what to do next. It was like finding a malfunction in a machine. I clearly saw the point of failure. At home, I immediately started packing my things. I took my laptop, a week's worth of clothes, and all the important documents: passport, birth certificate, social security card, house title, tax returns for the last 3 years, and income statements. I knew it would go to court. By then, there were already 30 missed calls on my phone. Messages from Nicole ranged from confusion to rage and panic. She accused me of overreacting and demanded that I come back immediately to talk. I turned off my phone completely. I checked into a hotel 20 minutes from home, a regular clean room with a bed and a desk. I turned my phone back on, only to send a message to my acquaintance, a lawyer named Brandon. I wrote that we needed to discuss a divorce in the morning. After that, I turned off my phone again and fell asleep. It was 8 hours of the most peaceful sleep I had had in months. I woke up once around 3 in the morning, remembered where I was and why, and fell back asleep. I felt a brief pang of something like sadness, but then immediately fell asleep again. The morning brought not regret, but absolute clarity. When I turned on my phone, I found about 100 notifications. Missed calls from Nicole, her mother, her sister, and 3 friends. Voicemails ranged from accusations of being unreasonable to desperate pleas to call back. The text messages were filled with every possible emotional manipulation tactic. She wrote that she was sorry, that she did not mean to hurt me, reminded me of her love, and asked why I was doing this to our family. I deleted them all without even listening or reading past the previews. I blocked Nicole's number and called Brandon. He answered after the second ring, clearly waiting for my call after my strange message the day before. When he asked what had happened, I answered directly. My wife had been publicly disrespecting me for months, and the previous evening, in front of 8 witnesses, she called me broken furniture. I had had enough. After a long pause, Brandon asked if I was sure, because divorce was a serious step, and many couples go through difficulties and only grow stronger. I replied that I had never been so sure of anything in my life. We discussed the legal details for about an hour. My situation turned out to be simpler than most. The house was in my name and bought 2 years before I met Nicole. The mortgage was also in my name, and all payments always came from my personal account. Our bank accounts had been separate from day one, because Nicole insisted on financial independence. Her car belonged to her, mine to me. Fortunately, there were no children. The only shared asset was the marriage itself, and I was ready to end it as quickly as the law allowed. Brandon promised to prepare the documents within a few days. He explained the whole process, the timelines, and possible expectations. The lawyer told me to document every step, save correspondence, take screenshots of social media posts, record all conversations with date and time. I gave the go-ahead to start the process. That same day, I found a furnished rental apartment in a quiet complex 10 minutes from work. Nothing luxurious, but clean and private. I signed the papers, moved my things, and set up my laptop on a small desk in the corner. It was strange to be alone after 5 years of marriage, but at the same time, I felt freedom. I no longer had to impress anyone or be afraid of disappointing anyone. 3 days later, Nicole was served divorce papers directly at her workplace. Brandon noted that it was not the most noble move, but I no longer considered myself obligated to be noble with her. She was at the boutique when the courier walked in. I was told later that she made a real scene. She sobbed and screamed about injustice and about how I had humiliated her. Colleagues had to calm her down, and the manager sent her home early. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered the look on her face when she called me defective, and that feeling passed. My phone started blowing up again, but now they were calling from other numbers. Nicole had clearly mobilized her entire support group. That evening, her sister Ashley called. She was outraged by my behavior and said that Nicole was devastated and had been crying for 3 days straight. I replied that she should have thought about that before insulting me in front of friends. Ashley tried to excuse her, calling it a joke and the result of stress, claiming that I was exaggerating everything. I blocked her. An hour later, my mother-in-law called. Her voice was dripping with that disappointment that mothers-in-law are so good at. She tried to convince me to fix things, saying Nicole was just overworked and did not mean anything bad. She lectured me that marriage is hard work and you cannot give up at the first difficulty. I asked why her daughter had not given up when she spent months pouring dirt on me and finally called me broken furniture. I added that she had raised a woman who thinks public humiliation of her husband is normal. Then I blocked that number too. Then Nicole's friends started writing. Messages from near strangers repeated how sorry she was, how she missed me, and that I was destroying 5 years of life over a trifle. Every number went to the blacklist. It was like a game of whack-a-mole, but eventually, the moles ran out. About a week later, Brandon brought news. Nicole had hired a lawyer and decided to contest the divorce. Her position was that I had abandoned her over a harmless comment, and she deserved compensation for 5 years of marriage. Brandon advised me to gather witness statements from that dinner. I felt awkward involving friends in my divorce, but their testimony mattered. I reached out to the 3 couples who had been present that evening. Everyone agreed to help immediately. Dave, my college friend, replied almost right away. He admitted that they had long been uncomfortable hearing how she talked to me, and that evening was just unbearable. Mike called personally and confirmed that she had crossed every line, and he was completely on my side. Ryan sent a long message stating that even in 2 years of knowing us, he had noticed her inappropriate treatment, and he and his wife had discussed that I deserved better. I passed all the testimony to Brandon. It was nice to realize that I was not crazy, and that others had also noticed the disrespect. Sometimes, when you are in a bad situation for too long, you start blaming yourself. Soon, Nicole started taking more sophisticated revenge. First, my card was declined at a gas station. It turned out that the account had been frozen. At the bank, they explained that my wife had filed a fraud claim, alleging that I was making unreasonable purchases and was mentally unstable. Even though she was not the account owner, she knew my social security number, my mother's maiden name, and other personal information. I had to spend 3 hours presenting divorce documents and proof of ownership to get everything unfrozen. The bank manager was outraged by her actions and put additional protection on my account, requiring my physical presence and multiple forms of ID for any transactions. I documented this incident and passed the information to Brandon. A few days later, I decided to stop by the house to pick up the remaining things: seasonal clothes, tools from the garage, books, and personal mementos. Approaching my own door, which I had entered for 6 years, I discovered that the key did not fit. She had changed the locks on a house that did not belong to her, and that I had bought long before we met. I called the police right from the doorstep. Brandon said over the phone that this would only help our case. 2 hours later, officers arrived. Nicole opened the door looking disheveled, with red eyes from tears or anger. When she saw the police, she went pale. The officers explained to her that I was the sole owner of the property and that she had to let me in. She tried to argue, screaming that it was her home too, but the officer cut her off, explaining that the law works differently and she had no right to restrict the owner's access. She let me in, glaring at me. In the garage, I found my things packed in black garbage bags: clothes, my grandfather's watch, photographs, my father's tools. Everything looked like trash ready to be thrown out. When I asked her about it, she venomously replied that I had left over one joke. The officers helped document the condition of the belongings and the lock change for the report. While I was loading my car, Nicole started crying again, begging me to talk and promising to change. I reminded her that she had never truly apologized, only called her words a joke. One of the officers, before I left, supported me, saying that no one should have to put up with that kind of treatment. Brandon was thrilled with the new evidence. He noted that with her antics, she was destroying her own position in court. But Nicole did not stop. The next week, my gym membership was canceled. She called them, pretending to be my wife, and terminated the contract. I had to restore access and set up a security pin. Then my insurance company called. Someone had tried to cancel my car insurance policy. She had again impersonated me, using my information. After that, I locked down absolutely everything. Every subscription, every service and account. I changed passwords to complex combinations, set up two-factor authentication, and updated security questions to ones she could not know. I also set up fraud alerts with the credit bureaus. She tried to turn my life into chaos, hoping it would make me come back, but the result was the opposite. Each of her attempts to harm me only confirmed that I had made the right decision. 2 months later, the legal process of dissolving the marriage continued. Brandon filed a motion to grant him exclusive possession of the house, since Nicole had proven by her actions that she could not be trusted with access to his property. The day of the court hearing arrived. My ex-wife finally showed up with her lawyer, some man in a cheap suit who already seemed to regret taking the case. He had probably expected an easy payday until he realized who he was actually dealing with. The judge was an older woman who had seen every divorce trick in the book, a stern lady with glasses on a chain who had absolutely no tolerance for drama. Nicole's lawyer spoke first. "Your Honor, although the house is formally in the husband's name, my client lived there for 5 years, investing in its maintenance and improvement." "In what way exactly?" the judge interrupted. "Was she on the mortgage? Did she make payments?" The lawyer replied that her contribution consisted of housekeeping and emotional support for the marriage. The judge's eyebrow rose a good inch, a bad sign for the defense. Then Brandon presented our evidence. He worked methodically, organized everything, and supported every word with documents. The title deed confirmed that he had owned the home 2 years before meeting Nicole. Mortgage statements clearly showed that every payment was debited from his personal account. Bank records proved that he had paid absolutely all household expenses throughout the marriage: utilities, insurance, groceries. Next came the documentation of the harassment, police reports about the illegal lock change, bank records of the false fraud report she had filed, statements from the gym and insurance company about her attempts to impersonate him, and photographs of his belongings packed in garbage bags. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have signed affidavits from 6 witnesses who saw Mrs. Patterson publicly humiliate my client at the dinner that triggered this process. This was not an isolated incident. but part of a documented pattern of disrespectful behavior lasting approximately 18 months. Nicole's lawyer tried to object. "Your Honor, my client was simply expressing frustration with her marriage. These witnesses are clearly biased in favor of the husband." Two of the couples were originally the wife's friends, Brandon countered. "They came to us because they found her treatment of my client unacceptable and wanted to support the truth." The judge studied the documents for what seemed like an hour, although no more than 10 minutes passed. Finally, she looked up. "I grant exclusive possession of the residence to the plaintiff. Mrs. Patterson, you have 30 days to remove your personal belongings from the premises. Any further attempts to interfere with Mr. Patterson's accounts, property, or daily life will be treated as contempt of court with appropriate consequences." Is that clear? Nicole's lawyer quickly nodded, but she herself struggled to maintain her composure. Her face turned red, and her fists were clenched tightly. Next came the hearing on spousal support. Here, Nicole was hoping for a comeback. Her lawyer filed a motion, claiming that she was entitled to payments because she had sacrificed her professional growth for the family. "Your Honor, my client gave up her career ambitions to focus on the home and help her husband advance. Now, at 35, she faces rebuilding her work life with a huge gap in her employment history." Brandon had counter-arguments ready. "Your Honor, Mrs. Patterson voluntarily worked part-time throughout the marriage. Before the wedding, she held the same position as she does now. There was no sacrifice. She simply chose not to work full-time because her husband's income covered all expenses." He presented pay stubs and employment records. For 5 years, Nicole had worked 20 hours a week at a boutique, spending her modest salary solely on personal indulgences while her husband paid all the bills. "My client is not asking for excessive support," the lawyer argued, "only an amount necessary to maintain her standard of living during the transition to independence." The judge carefully reviewed the papers. "I see no evidence of career sacrifice. On the contrary, this is a situation where a person chose not to work full-time while being fully supported by their spouse. The motion is denied." At that moment, Nicole finally lost control. "You are all against me," she practically shouted. "He is lying about everything. I gave this man my best years, and he left over one little joke. Mrs. Patterson, if you do not calm down immediately, I will hold you in contempt of court." She did not stop. Security had to forcibly remove her from the courtroom while she continued to scream about injustice, a rigged system, and how Brandon had manipulated everyone. When she was gone, her lawyer approached the bench. "Your Honor, I am withdrawing from this case." A reasonable decision. A week later, Nicole was representing herself, filing motions that read like the diary entries of someone having a nervous breakdown. Disjointed paragraphs about what a good wife she had been, how vindictive Brandon was, and how she deserved a reward for her efforts. They were all denied, without exception. The final hearing took place 3 months after that fateful dinner at the restaurant. Nicole came alone, looking 10 years older. No lawyer, no friends in the gallery, only her, against a legal system she had tried to manipulate. The final verdict: she got nothing. 0. No spousal support, because she had sacrificed nothing. No rights to the house, because it had never belonged to her. No share of the retirement savings, because the marriage had been short and she had not contributed to them. Only her car, which was in her name, and the belongings she had already taken. The judge's concluding words were harsh. "I find no basis for your claims, Mrs. Patterson. The property belonged to the husband before the marriage, and he bore all financial responsibility. Your behavior after the separation was harassing and unreasonable. You are fortunate that he did not file a counterclaim. The divorce is granted." Nicole tried to appeal the decision on her own, since no lawyer in town wanted to take her case after the courtroom scandal. The denial came in record time. No new evidence, no errors found in the original decision. According to rumors, after the trial, she moved in with her mother and got a job as a full-time waitress. For the first time in years. They say she tells everyone she meets that her ex-husband stole her house and left her with nothing. One of the mutual acquaintances, Courtney, finally told her to her face, "He didn't steal anything. It was his house and his money. You treated him like garbage for months, and he left. That's not theft. That's consequences." Nicole just cried, insisting that the whole world was against her. After that conversation, Courtney stopped talking to her. Kayla, Nicole's best friend from that very evening, contacted Brandon a few months after all the legal matters were concluded. "I need to apologize," she said. "We all saw that she treated you badly, but we thought that was just your dynamic and that you were fine with it. Seeing her behavior after you left, all the lying and the unreasonable claims, I realized how wrong I was. I'm sorry we didn't intervene sooner." Brandon replied that it was not their job to save his marriage. Still, he had done the right thing. Nicole continued to spiral downward, blaming everyone around her, and eventually lost almost all her friends. But that was no longer his problem. Life moved on. Divorce is not the end of the world, just the end of one chapter. 30 days later, he returned to his house. Nicole had completely removed her belongings. The place felt different, somehow empty, but also lighter, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders, one he had been carrying for years. He completely changed the environment. New furniture, fresh paint, a different energy. He got rid of everything that reminded him of her. The decor she had chosen, the pictures, the pillows she had insisted on. For the first time since she had moved in, the space became truly his own. He painted the living room a color he chose himself, and hung photographs that he actually liked. It was a wonderful feeling. Work was going great. 2 months after the official divorce was finalized, he got a promotion. His boss noted that he had become more focused, more confident, and better at handling his workload. Amazing how the removal of a person who constantly puts you down makes you more successful in everything else. 6 months later, he started dating again. At first, nothing serious, just socializing, a chance to get to know people without the subsequent criticism. He met Lauren at a bookstore. They both reached for the same copy of a thriller. An awkward moment turned into an hour-long conversation about literature and life. Later, she, like everyone else, asked about his past. "She sounds exhausting," Lauren remarked after the brief story. She had been. It had taken Brandon too long to realize it. When asked what the final straw was, he replied, "She called me worthless in front of witnesses, as if I were a broken appliance that could be replaced with a newer model. That's when I realized I had tolerated disrespect for too long." Lauren agreed, saying that leaving such a relationship required great inner strength. It is not yet clear where his relationship with Lauren will lead, but with her, it was calm. She showed respect, was interested in his work, and knew how to listen, basic things that, after what he had been through, seemed incredible. Recently, Nicole's sister sent a message from a new number. "You ruined her life." No, she ruined her own life. He just stopped letting her destroy his. He blocked that contact too, like all the previous ones. His mother asked him if he regretted the marriage, or if he should have tried harder. His only regret was that he had not left sooner. "You stayed because you loved her," his mother said, and that was true. Last month, the old group of friends invited him over. They gathered at Dave's house, specifically emphasizing that Nicole would never be invited again. They grilled steaks, watched the game, and talked about everything except his ex-wife. Everything felt normal again. A few weeks ago, he ran into Steve, Nicole's father, at a hardware store. He approached first, looking visibly uncomfortable. "I want you to know," he began. "None of us realized how bad things were. Nicole always described your fights as normal marital problems. We didn't know she treated you that way. You were good to her, much better than she deserved." They shook hands and parted ways. Last week, a message came from an unknown number. The area code matched the area where Nicole's mother lived. Curiosity got the better of him. It was Nicole herself, writing from her mother's phone, since all her other contacts were blocked. "I know you probably won't read this, but I am working on myself. I messed everything up and I'm not asking for a second chance. I just want to sincerely apologize for everything I did." He did not reply. He simply deleted the message and blocked the number. 2 days later, he and Lauren ended up at that same Italian restaurant where it had all ended. She had chosen it randomly through an app, not knowing the backstory. At first, he wanted to suggest another place, but then changed his mind. They sat at a different table with a better view. Lauren showed him pictures of her sister's baby. They ate bread, chatted, a normal evening in pleasant company. In the middle of dinner, she asked if everything was okay, noticing his thoughtfulness. "This is where my marriage ended," he admitted. "I didn't plan to come back here, but here we are." She squeezed his hand sympathetically and offered to leave, but he refused. The food was too good. They finished dinner, shared dessert, and, as usual, playfully argued over the check. He won. They walked out of the restaurant, holding hands. The same door he had walked through alone 8 months ago. But this time, the ending was completely different.